Good morning, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well today. And now it's time for something completely different, or at least a little bit different. We're going to shift gears and go into draft mode for a few videos here. The Senior Bowl took place over the last week. We had, I think, 3 days of practice last week, and then the game was Saturday. So it's all in the rearview mirror. Normally, I would have been covering it as it went along, talking about who was standing out and who was doing what. But we were looking for a new coach, and then when the coach got here, all anybody wanted to talk about was the coach. So there wasn't a ton I did with the Senior Bowl as it was happening. I've been able to catch up on it a little bit. I've read some coverage of it. I've seen some of the coverage that NFL Network had of the actual practices, which was great. I think ESPN did a little bit as well. So I've been able to catch up a pretty decent amount. But at the time the Senior Bowl was actually happening, I just didn't have the ability to really go into it the way I needed to because the coaching stuff just took priority. But now that we know who the coach is and we're just waiting on these coordinator hires and we're waiting on some assistant coach hires, et cetera, we can spend some time looking back at the Senior Bowl. So I believe it was 3 days of practice last week, and then the bowl itself was played on Saturday. So it's a good amount of data. Obviously, the Senior Bowl is not necessarily going to encompass the cream of the cream of the cream of the crop, but it is going to have a lot of good players, and it's going to have a lot of guys that are trying to prove something. Now, obviously, they're often the older players because they're seniors. So the underclassmen tend to be guys who declare early because they know they're going to be drafted really high. And the fact that they declared early is part of the appeal. You're getting them at a much younger age. So, to a certain extent, you're using the Senior Bowl as an opportunity to maybe find a lower valued guy that you think is going to be better than everyone's expecting. And it's an opportunity for these guys that are a little bit older than these teams would prefer to maybe get on their radar in a positive way. So I'm going to take a look at a handful of guys on offense in this video who stood out in a positive way during the Senior Bowl process. So we're going to start with the 5 guys on offense. We're going to do 5 guys on defense later. And then at a later date, I'll probably take a look at some guys who didn't do so well. Now, before we get into this, I do want to specify there are definitely some players not listed here who played well, like really well, but they weren't what I was looking at, right? Like there are certain positions the Seahawks need, and there are certain positions they kind of, well, they don't need. So focusing on the stuff that we might need, the first guy I want to talk about is Spencer Rattler. He was the only quarterback at the Senior Bowl that I think really unmitigatedly helped his case. Maybe him and Penix, but the thing with Penix is that if he did help his cause at the Senior Bowl, which he probably did because he ran like 20 miles an hour, he looked fast, he looked athletic, and he did make some nice throws, he has probably pushed himself up to the point where the Seahawks are never going to be able to draft him. So I'm kind of not even thinking about Penix. But Spencer Rattler had a pretty good week of practice, and then he won MVP of the game. Now, I don't think he did a ton in the game. I think he threw 1 touchdown. It was a nice throw, and he did probably have the best game of anybody overall, I guess, but it was not exactly an offensive showcase. And I don't think Rattler did enough to be like the Jay Cutler style sleeper. I don't think he did enough to be Ryan Tannehill in this draft and just suddenly rocket up to the first round. I do think he's going to get into the top 100 though, and I'm not sure what he's going to do at the combine. I'm not sure how he's going to interview. There's still a lot more we need to know, but of the quarterbacks who participated at the Senior Bowl, he's the only guy who I think went in the right direction definitively. And Penix as well, I guess. But again, I'm not thinking about Penix because I think he's going in the top 12 all day. We're not going to be there. So Rattler is a guy who may have pushed himself into the third, could eventually be second round. I like the way he played. He showcased some really nice throws, nice arm. There's some really intriguing stuff going on there. I still don't love all the extracurriculars with him, but I am definitely intrigued by Spencer Rattler. Guys like Bo Nix and Joe Milton really did not look that good to me. So this quarterback, by virtue of just doing pretty good, stood out. All right, so the next guy we're going to look at here is a tight end who was impressive at the Senior Bowl. It's Theo Johnson. This dude, he caught my attention during the season because he's big, 6'6", 260 pounds or so, and he's probably going to be a better pro than he was a collegiate player. In college, he really didn't do that much, and you can see that there were points during the season where he was considered a UDFA, barely going to get drafted if he's lucky guy, but now that the season's over, look at him. He's up in the 150s. This guy will probably be a better pro than he was a collegiate player. So he moves really well for a guy of that size. And I think there's some real potential here. This is going to become one of my sleepers because we need tight ends, and this is the kind of tight end who might come out of nowhere and be a really good impact player after not really doing that much in college. So I thought Theo Johnson looked really good as a Senior Bowl guy. He's going to be one of my guys from now on, I think. Next three guys are going to be offensive linemen. We've got this guy who didn't really need the help, Taliese Fuaga of Oregon State. He's playing right tackle. Some people think he's going to move to guard, but I will say that if he's actually 6'7", which is what I've seen, I don't think that's happening. I don't think a 6'7" player is going to move to guard. That's tough. It's the same problem that Abe Lucas has. So Fuaga, if you draft him at this point, you're probably looking at playing him at right tackle. We'll have to see what the combine says about his height, but he looked absolutely dominant out there. He's huge and he moves really well. Not going to have a problem playing the tackle position at the NFL level, I don't think. Once he latches onto you as a pass rusher, you're just done. He seems like he's a really smart and heady player. And at this point, I'm wondering if he might even move too high for the Seahawks to get. As of right now, he's ranked in about 18. Once he starts getting up to, let's say he bumps up to like the 10th, which is totally possible at this point after that Senior Bowl he just had. I thought he was one of the best players there. At that point, you kind of have to start assuming that he's never going to fall to 16. Now, I don't know if we'd want to do that. We still have to figure out the Abe Lucas thing, but the possibility of adding a superstar right tackle who I think Fuaga is clearly going to be a stud in this league when Lucas, his career might be about over for all you know. It's got to at least be on the table. So I thought Fuaga looked great. Another right tackle that I thought looked great was Roger Rosengarten, a Husky. And this was a guy who was really getting some positive attention at the Senior Bowl. He looked really strong. He, oh, excuse me, he had some plays where he just absolutely blew up his opponent. He had some plays where he just looked like he was going to be an NFL tackle, and this is a guy who really didn't look good in the national title game against Michigan, so it was a much-needed boost for Rosengarten. And unlike a guy like Fuaga, Rosengarten is still probably going to be a day 3 pick. He might sneak into day 2, but this is a good guy to get if maybe you're thinking along the lines of, we need a backup for Abe Lucas, and we want it to be a backup that we trust. Rosengarten in the 4th round, if he ends up around there, which I think is reasonable. Even after this Senior Bowl, I don't think it's going to go crazy. Like, now you're talking. Now you've got yourself the possibility of having a solution behind Lucas that isn't going to cost you blue chip type resources. So Rosengarten, to me, might be more interesting than Fuaga because he would be easier to get. And worst case scenario, he makes your depth on the offensive line better, and whoever complained about having a deep offensive line. All right, final guy we're going to look at on the offensive side that I thought looked really good that is interesting to me would be Jackson Powers-Johnson. This was one of the big stories of the Senior Bowl to me. This guy just looked absolutely perfect as an offensive line center prospect. He's very smart with the way he understands angles, the way he understands where to be, how to use leverage. He's very, very strong. He's a really good athlete for a guy his size. He's like 330 or something, I think. We'll see where he measures at the combine, but he is a big dude, and it doesn't seem like that size is inhibiting him in any meaningful way. It seems like that the combination of traits here is rarefied. So we are rapidly approaching first-round territory for Jackson Powers-Johnson. Now, at a certain point, I'm going to be like, I don't know if I want to do that at 16. I'm probably not going to be on board with drafting Jackson Powers Johnson at 16, but if we trade down, which I do think we will do, into the 20s, the mid-20s, the late 20s, and Jackson Powers Johnson continues his upward ascent and continues to show he might be a prototype center, somebody who combines strength, athletic ability, size, and intelligence, all these traits, then late first round, I might be on board with that. He might be that kind of center. And so far, it seems like he's just doing everything right. So this is definitely going to become an intriguing guy to target if we trade down in the first round, which I still suspect is going to be the case. All right, so that is my look at the 5 guys on offense who impressed me at the Senior Bowl that I've got my sights on, if you will. So there were other guys, don't get me wrong, there were some receivers, there were some running backs, but I'm not really looking at those guys that much. I'm focusing on the lines, and I'm looking at quarterback as well. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you guys feel about these guys. I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. The next video should be a look at some guys on defense that I thought impressed me at the Senior Bowl.